All right, today I will be speaking about the Marxist theory. Again, today I will be speaking about the Marxist theory, and this is going to be my article presentation. The presentation that I will be relating to would be the topic of this week, which would be the Marxist theory. And the creator of the Marxist theory was um, Karl Marx, also known as the father of communism. And with communism, it's basically society considered to not have a class division or government or personal property. And basically, his goal, um, Mr. Marx's goal, was for everyone to be able to share benefits of labor, and that the state government would control all wealth and property. And therefore, the difference of Marxism and communism is that Marxism is a philosophy, while communism is basically a system of government based off the policies of the Marxists. And again, the Marxist theory is a class division or the struggle of a class, right? Which basically individuals who are trying to establish economies to be. In other words, it can be either accommodated or outgrown the control system over material or product resources of societies. And as far as with the study that I'll be speaking about, going a little bit farther here, in regards to my article that I got, it was from John Livney. I hope I said his name right. If not, I do apologize. But addressing the study that I picked up on was the discrimination within the legal system, right? And in this case, they were speaking about how to go about reducing the amount of discretion allowed for judges to address the means of any type of un unequal treatment in the courts, right? So you have a lot of discrimination, and majority of the time, as we know today, still there's a lot of commotion when it comes to minorities, or also other individuals that are not considered like Caucasian. Just kind of laying out some facts there, that has always been that way since we've known for of time, right? So that's basically what the study was. It's also highlighting some of the things that occurred within the case of um, Malkleski versus Georgia. And I'll let you guys know a little bit about this case here, and what happened during that time. And during this case here, I feel like it was a little bit interesting as far as how they went about showing that there was unequal treatment within the system. And just to let you know, during this case, I'm trying to find my notes here. I don't think I'm seeing anything here from what I remember. But basically, from what I remember, it looks like it's possibly another case name, McCloskey versus Kelp. And during this time, this was a death sentence for the guy by the name of Warren McCloskey for armed robbery and murder was upheld during this time. And the date that was decided of this sentencing for this individual was back in 1987. So basically, what happened was McCloskey, who is known to be a black man, was convicted of 2 counts of armed robbery and 1 count of murder in the Superior Court of Fulton County, Georgia, on October the 12th. And again, that was during this time. Looks like during this time. Let's see here. I'm sorry. And that's what I picked up there based off of that case. And some of, again, here, trying to maneuver these slides at the same time. Some of the key foundings, again, that I found was based off the McCloskey versus Georgia case. I did find that also just some other individuals who had some pointers and things that they wanted to discuss during the article that I glanced over and read. Basically, some of the highlights that I was glancing over was how an individual by the last name here is Ramey. He had work um, a book. I'm sorry, he had a book that he wrote. The rich get poorer. I'm sorry. Yes, the rich get richer, and the poor get prison. Right. I mean, you can pretty much sum up what this book was basically about, where individuals who are considered upper class are continuing to be wealthy while the poor are facing hard times and struggles, right? As far as you see, it would be one of them being prison. And again, that's minority individuals who are majority of the time considered um, in that bracket, right? And then also some other interesting key findings that I found was how I like how once again Rainey he stated this quote: "We must narrow the range in which police officers, prosecutors, and judges exercise discretion, and we must develop procedures to hold them accountable to the public for the fairness and reasonableness of their decisions." Quote End quote. I'm sorry. And that's some of the conclusions that he had during that time of the book that he wrote with the rich get richer and the poor get prison. And I liked how he basically explained how, police officers, prosecutors, and then judges have a tendency to exercise discretion, right? And therefore, they must be accountable for the things that they say or do, right? Because the community, right, the public eye, should say, the public eye is watching them, right? And therefore, you always have to be on pins and needles to an extent if you're the type of individual who will, be very blunt and say whatever is on your mind just because you feel the need that it's a right to do. And just kind of going back over um, this week's discussion during week 10, basically I feel like um, the things that the things that we discussed also as well with the flip grid. They were talking about, the issues that come about within society, right? What are considered some of the troubles still today? And I feel like with the conflict theory, also known as the Marxist theory, there could be a lot of um, there can be a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to individuals expressing themselves in a court of law, and just being able to know that you know you're in a court, you have to abide by the judge's rules at that time because you're under his or her um, courtroom, and therefore if you get out of hand, they can order you to be removed, right? So therefore you have to be mindful, right, of the things that are being said. And just some other key pointers that I looked at throughout the reading of this article was how discretion, and then also in institutional discrimination comes about, right? And with these two, some things that they go about as far as discussing how to reduce discrimination. They talk about the production of essentialized subject, and then also the contradictions were resulting from such productions, right? So again, going back to the case with McCluskey versus Kelp, which I thought it was McCluskey versus Georgia um, during this time, but it occurred in Georgia. So at this time, again, the black man who was arrested, which was McCluskey, he was convicted of killing a white police officer in Georgia during a robbery and was sentenced to death, right? So, based off what I got from here, they were stating that McCluskey, uh, I'm sorry, appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, claiming that Georgia's sentencing process was racially discrimin, discriminatory. I cannot talk tonight. I'm so sorry. And therefore, just not just wanting to elaborate too much on that, but basically, um, McCluskey felt that he was, being picked up on due to him being, black, and due to the fact that, most likely they felt like, it was worth, him dying just because he apparently killed someone, right? So back then, during that time, it was still kind of harsh sentencing. So I'm assuming back then, for them personally, they were to say, so you took a life, so therefore we're gonna take yours, right? Um, so then also they stated as well, um, over about 2,000 murder cases clearly show that a person in Georgia who kills a white person must, I'm sorry, much more likely is to receive the death penalty than someone who kills a black person, right? So therefore, during that time, the Supreme Court or any court had very harsh punishment. I would say, just based off of the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment is, I feel like that's kind of over the top. Yes, you might serve life in jail for taking a life, but murder, so you get murdered, basically. And that's a lot of good key interpretations that I got from that during this time. And again, just kind of wanted to elaborate over this week's topic again, which was the Marxist theory, also known as conflict theory, and anything of that nature. They were, basically going back to what it states here. These are just my keynotes for me to elaborate on what is needed. So, the Marxist criminology impacts society today, again, just by being very opinionated, but also being very um, open minded to individuals who might feel, um, uncomfortable or violated to an extent. Us as a community and society now are a little bit more open to individuals who are not as other individuals, right? I feel like, kind of speaking about a little bit about, individuals who are considered, in within same sex marriages and things like that, or, who are openly pride, right? You know what I'm saying? Pride, just things like that. It's kind of like they're a little bit more open to, to what is going on and what is revolving around them. And again, as far as with this article that I was looking over and read about, was the impact that it's made on society, with the criminal justice system. It's always been rigged. I feel like it's always been rigged, no matter what color you are. It's a rigged system that needs to be completely broken down and rebuilt again if able, right? um and then as far as with the validity, right, in in regards to the validity here, um there has been, I feel like a handful of research within showing evidence that the Marxist theory is what it is as of today, due to the fact that, you know, time and time again, they have gone back and looked at, some cases, or they've gone back and looked at some situations to an extent as well, on how the criminal justice system is, how it can be considered to be how it can be considered to be uh, discrimination against, like, again, minorities and others, individuals, other than the Caucasian race, right? Because back when we were reading, again last week, how they stated how, some Caucasian individuals feel like they are untouched, right? They feel like that nothing could phase them as far as what occurs around them. So there's I feel like there's a handful of research and evidence to prove that the Marxist theory is what it is to an extent as of today. And then as far as any methods and actions that individuals might use to protect themselves against any type of crimes, as far as with this guy, McCluskey, at the time, his was murder, right? His crime was murder, and therefore he didn't have much method nor action to be able to protect him during that time. But today, as of today, individuals have a little bit more leeway when it comes to now having like video, you have people who have video, you have witnesses, and then also, you have cameras and things around where, the crime possibly could take place. And back then, during that time in Georgia, I'm sure it was most likely it could possibly have been a racist town who wasn't fond of minority individuals, right? And on top of that, if he was there, robbing a bank and shot a cop and things got worse than what it was, then of course, there's no way that he can protect himself back then, um, due to the lack of technology that we do, that we didn't have back then. And then as far as with the social structure and the um, social e- economic statuses that play upon the criminology policies, I kind of feel like, it comes back to the role. For instance, how they were talking about the police officers, the judges, and anybody within the criminal justice field, right? Any type of policymakers and people like that, they basically build the social structure, right? And the social economic statuses for the policies that are taken into place. So, for instance, a police officer, he's the individual, or she's the individual that runs the show on the streets, right? Someone commits a crime, or someone is not following the bylaws and things of that nature. They are there to talk to them and possibly arrest them, right? And see what's going on with them, to cause them to make that individual be the way that they are, right? And then as far as for judges, you have those who judge, right? Who judge the situation at hand. The jurors are there to help them out as well, but the judge at the end of the day is the one that calls the shots, right? As far as to what is your sentence, how long it's going to be, um, and so on and so forth. And then also for policymakers, I feel like they pretty much are like at the top of the food, not the food pyramid, but they're at the top of the criminal justice pyramid, right? Because policy, it says it as that policy. They are the ones to initiate, this is what should happen, this is what shouldn't happen, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to consider and think about during that time. And then also, lastly, here, recognizing the policy implications of, I'm sorry, psycho and economic based policies. Again, when it comes to policies, you have to pretty much reiterate some of the things at hand. Say, for instance, there's a rule, right? There's a rule that states, just thinking about like how the criminal justice system is, right? It could be a rule um, that is taken in into perspective, right? And the rule could be something kind of like, if an individual is caught red-handed stealing, any type of supplies, they automatically go to jail for 350 days, right? Or a little bit longer, just depending on what that is, right? Say, like also when it comes to stores, like you have individuals, if someone steals more than $50 worth of merchandise, they are to go to jail or get penalized with a ticket and have to show up to court and so on and so forth. Just things like that. You have to basically read between the lines. It might not be fully stated that this is what's going to happen, but in the back of your mind, you know that this is, what is most likely could possibly happen, right? So therefore, you have to conclude that due to my actions, I'm going to get in trouble for what was done, right? So all in all, I just feel like um, there is a lot that could be talked about during this time, but I didn't want to elaborate too much. But I definitely feel like this article was definitely a good read. I might not have hit every point in detail that I possibly needed, but I did the best that I could. And therefore, that's it in a nutshell. John Livier did a great job um, with talking about the discrimination that occurs within the legal system, not only back then, but also still till today. And other individuals, just kind of going back here a little bit, I forgot to mention about this one guy, or maybe a couple of guys here. Um, I liked how this one guy named Samuel Walker. He talked about during the early days or early years of American history how the criminal justice system um, was responsive to um, the will of popular will, right? And how the public was in basically in control of the system of being unfair, corrupted, and discriminate against others, right? And then also, I like how Donald Black, he was an individual who tried to reduce discretion, and something that he talked about to address discrimination was what they call, quote, socialization of law, end quote. So with that, I just kind of feel like there's so many things that could be discussed and opened on subject matter, and therefore,